Hey, it's Michael. Thanks so much for taking time out of your busy day to come to this training. And my goal for the next 30 to 40 minutes is to make this absolutely worth your time, like 10 times return on investment versus the time that you are investing in this. So I just want to do a few questions just as we get started on the training today, just a few questions to get us rolling. And the first question is, who is today for, right? And so you signed up, you reserved the time, you came, you logged on, you're watching. Just right off the bat, I want to let you know who we're talking to, because if it's not you, I'll just give you your time back. So here's who today I think will really help. It is for pastors and church leaders who take equipping very seriously. So if you're the kind of leader who just wants to do everything by yourself, if you don't love giving away ministry, if you want to kind of be a ministry hoarder, this will just frustrate you and not help you at all. This is for people who want to give ministry away, that want to empower other people to do things. And so you have to have that mindset, or this probably will not help you. The second thing is, I think this will help churches who realize that they have more potential than they're currently realizing. And so if your church is doing awesome and you're like, hey, we just want to keep doing what we're doing, today's probably not going to help you. But if you say, there's a bigger picture, there's a bigger vision, we believe God has more in store, and we think developing leaders may be a key to that, then this is going to absolutely help you. And then the third, this is probably obvious, but I'll just say it anyway, is if your church just needs more leaders, if you just look around and say, we have more to do than people to do it, today is absolutely going to help you. That's who we're aiming for. So if any of those three things describe you, I think you're in the right place, and the next 30 to 40 minutes or so will be very, very, very helpful. So next question, I kind of already answered it, is how long is it going to be? I am recording this live to make sure that it doesn't ramble on, or I am not recording this live to make sure that it does not ramble on. So I think we're going to be somewhere between 35 to 40 minutes of tons of practical help. I'm not just going to be pitching a product. I do have something to offer you, but I'm going to do it at the end. So if it totally doesn't interest you, you can just be done and go away. This is going to be practical. It's going to be stuff that I know I did not learn when I was in seminary and in Bible college. It's going to be kind of field-tested, real-life, proven stuff. And that's what it's going to be about. So I'd budget about 40 minutes of time. And then if you want to do some of the follow-up exercises, you can do that as well. The third question I always like to ask at the beginning of these trainings is, what's the catch? We have a staff, we have a team. This is a free training. It costs you $0 to participate. So what's the catch? It is free, 100% free. I promise it will help. We're going to talk about things that are going to help your church. But for those of you who want to go beyond this and implement and get help and actually make a ton of progress, I do have an offer for you at the end. So if you stick around till the very end, I will share that with you. It will be an exclusive offer just for the webinar, just because you've invested your time. So let me just share a little bit about my background and why we're even talking about this today. I used to be a youth pastor. I was a youth pastor for a while, and then I was a church planner, and then I was a pastor. And throughout all those ministry experiences of just 12 or 14 years of just working in the local church, I realized that while we could have a lot of volunteers, we didn't have a lot of leaders. That we could have a lot of attenders, but that didn't automatically translate into having a lot of leaders. We had a ton of people coming to our church, but it was always a challenge until we figured out a few things to get leaders to step up and lead. And in fact, as a church grows, but the leadership base doesn't grow with it, it actually creates more problems. And so I'm coming at this from a ministry background, this is what happened in the real church that we led. Over the last several years, I've had the opportunity to run a organization called Church Fuel, and it's been amazing. It's been so fun. Love doing it. We get to serve churches all around the country. Here's like a map of just where our customers come from. You can see that we have customers in almost every state in the United States, and we have people just from the north, from the south, east, west, big cities, small towns, across all kinds of denominations. I love our Church Fuel family, our Church Fuel community. One of the biggest problems that we like to address through Church Fuel is that most churches have more vision than they have strategies, right? They have more passion than they have people, and they need actual help, not a bunch of theory and a bunch of random philosophical stuff, but they need actual help developing leaders, tools, not just ideas to do it. And so that's really what we try to talk about through Church Fuel. It's where you would hear like a thing for 20 minutes and go, okay, yeah, that sounds good, but how do we do it? The yeah, but how is really what we want to get at. And so I want to lay out to you a plan today to develop leaders at every level through your church. I'm going to answer the how questions, the yeah but how questions, and give you some actionable, real things that you can do to get going. And the reason we do this is because the church needs leaders. Your church needs leaders. Leadership is one of those spiritual gifts. It is a spiritual gift. There are God-gifted people in your church that have the gift of leadership, and they need to lead. And as they lead, and as you lead, the whole church gets better. Leadership development, as we talk about this, it's really a part of the discipleship process. That is a core belief of ours, that leadership development is really connected to discipleship. And the reality in your church is that the leaders in your church come in more contact with people than you do. Right? The people who are actually leading in your church have a greater influence than just the staff by themselves. And great leaders will attract other leaders. And so as you create culture, as you work on this stuff, there's going to be a snowball effect or a ripple effect that will help. And so so you say, all right, I'm in, and tell me what I need to know. How do we develop leaders at every level? At the top, at the middle, all the way throughout our church. How do we develop leaders at every level? Well, I want to share 3 things. We serve churches of all denominations. I grew up in a Baptist church, so every sermon had 3 points. So I have 3 points for you today that will help you develop leaders at every level. And they're going to be practical and they're going to be helpful. So here's the first one. Let me just go ahead and give it to you. Principle number 1 is this. Start where you are. Start where you are. Now, this should give you a ton of freedom. I do not want you to come to this training and be overwhelmed with a list of stuff to do that you can't ever get to. Start where you are. I don't know what kind of phone you use. I use an iPhone, and I don't ever use my phone as a phone, right? I use it as a whole bunch of other things, but I rarely use it as an actual phone. But one of the most common things I use my phone for is maps, right? And so over the last 10 or 15 years, right, we don't have to go to map books anymore. Some of you remember going to MapQuest, printing out directions. That was awesome. But now we just open up our phone and we say, where are we going? And then we type in the address of where we want to go. And then it says, where are you starting from right now? And you put current location and it gives you a map. Well, one of the most important features of that is where are you right now? And so that little blue dot that appears up on the screen that shows where you are now, you actually need to know where you are now before you know where you're going. Because you've got to start, your dot is going to drive you from your current place to your intended destination. So let's talk about where you are right now, right? You say, we need to have leaders at every level. Well, where are we now? Because before we can get to where we're going, we got to know where we are now. What do we have right now? And so many times in Churchville, we talk about having what we call the growth mindset. You probably don't have you probably have the growth mindset because you're at a training, right? People that go to trainings tend to have a growth mindset. The opposite is a stuck mindset. A stuck mindset pastor would say, well, we just don't have any leaders. Well, we're just kind of in a community where there's not a lot of leaders. Well, I can't get any leaders around me. And we say it like that too. It's like with the Eeyore voice. It's like, can't find any leaders, right? We're depressed. It's like we're blaming people. It's like, how come there's no leaders in our church? That's a stuck mindset. A growth mindset says, hey, we have who we have. This is our building. This is where we meet. These are our constraints. These are our limits. These are the people that we have. It may be one person, but I'm going to start where I am. Leadership development in your church starts with where you are. What leaders do you have right now leading? It's not nobody. The worst case scenario is it's you, and you plus God is enough. Right? We have to have that core conviction that, hey, I have what I have. God's given me what He's given me, and I'm going to be a good steward of that. It's the parable of the talents. That's one of my favorite parables that Jesus told, right? Somebody may have 10. Somebody may have 5. Somebody may have 3. Somebody may just have 1. It's not the amount of talents that we have. It's what we do with them. And we do not want to be like the wicked servant who got cast out at the end, who said, hey, you did nothing with what I gave you. You just buried it in the ground. You did nothing with what I gave you. But whether God's given you 1, 3, 5, 10, a million, 100, or anywhere in between, the leaders with the growth mindset, they say, this is who we have. This is what we have. This is the structure, the system. This is what we can't change. This is what we hope changes one day. But this is where we are. And I'm going to develop leaders in the constraints, with the constructs and the constraints of where we are right now. We're not going to blame. We're not going to say, I wish. We're not going to compare. We're going to say, this is who we are. This is what we've got. So as you look at your church right now, here's how you do this. What leaders do you have? And what potential leaders do you have? Right? It's a 2-column worksheet, and I've got a template for you. It's simply a 2-column piece of paper. You can go to a dry erase board. You can open up a document, and you could say, who are our existing leaders? Maybe it's only you, but maybe you have some other staff you could put on there. Maybe you have elders. Maybe you have deacons. Maybe there's a few volunteers. I'm not asking if they're good leaders. I'm just asking if they're leaders. Who do you have right now? And then on the other side of that sheet of paper, on column 2, you write down potential leaders, right? Who connected to our church right now could lead. We're not saying could lead at a high level. We're not saying could be a great leader, but just like who could be a leader. Like if we developed them, trained them, if we had processes, cultures, and all this mythical stuff that we should have, if we had all that, could these people be a leader? Who do we have? Who could we have? And that's your map dot. That's a little blue map. That's your current reality. That's where you're starting from. That's the place that you're going to begin. People that develop leadership cultures, pastors that develop leadership cultures in their church, they don't just have like a whole bunch of outside leaders parachute in. They develop the people that they have. They start where they are. And I really believe this, that leadership development begins with a conviction that you're going to equip people to do the work of the ministry, not do all the ministry, but equip people. And the people that you're going to equip, you're starting with where you are right now. So who are your current leaders? Who are your potential leaders in your sphere of influence, in your circle, in your church, in your congregation right now? Just identify them. Just identify them. You're like, well, we need a pipeline. We need a process. We need a system. We need a staff person. We need a class. We need a seminary. We need an internship program. Just start with who you have. Who's leading right now? Who could lead if we develop them? And that is where your starting point is. That's your blue dot on the map. And if you will identify those two things, you will be so far ahead of the people that give up before they even get started. Right? You're not going to give up before you get started. Just identify your current reality. That's number one. Just start where you are. You can do that today. When this training's over, you can close down the computer and you could say, who are our potential leaders? And that becomes your prayer list. That becomes your meeting list. That becomes your hit list, where you're going to go out and you're going to say, these are the people that I'm going to connect with. These are the people we're going to put through a process. Just start with where you are. So that's number one. Number two is this. Build your toolbox, okay? Build your toolbox. Here's what I mean by that. So many times we talk about developing leaders and creating culture and building pipelines, and all these words, while they're great, they're also theoretical and cultural, right? They're all just like concepts. But concepts don't develop leaders. Tools actually develop leaders, right? In order for you to develop these people that you have identified, right? So in step one, you've identified them, current and potential. So now we've got some people. In order to develop them, you don't need theories of leadership development. You need tools that you can actually use with these people. And so wanting to develop these people is not a plan. Passion for developing leaders, one day in the future when things calm down and the calendar's not so crazy, is not going to accomplish anything. If you want to develop these people that you have identified, your current and your potential leaders, you need some tools. And what I want to do is I want to recommend 3 tools, both in general and in particular with specificity, and say, here are 3 tools that you can use to develop these people that you've identified. All right. So the first tool, and I love this tool, I use this tool, we use it in our business even at Church Fuel, is books. Books are a leadership development tool. Here's why I love books. And I think books are better than blogs, podcasts, articles, free stuff on the internet. I think books are a great starting point to develop these leaders that you've identified. And here's why. Because somebody spent a lot of time, they had a lot of conversations, they did a lot of research, they convinced a publisher that it was a good idea, they had an editor read it, they had an editor reread it, they proofread it, they typeset it, they published it, and they put it on sale. And it was a long process, right? Having written books, it is a long process. And for about $15, with free shipping if you have Amazon Prime like I do, right? For about $15, you can buy all those conversations, all that research, formatted, edited, shaped, molded, packaged into a book that took somebody 2, 3, 4. I read a book not too long ago. It said this book is a result of 10-year research study. So for $15, you get what took somebody 10 years to figure out, and you get it for $15 and a few hours of time. That is an incredible return on investment. And I believe that if you're a great leader, you should find a way to consume the information that is in books, published, printed books. Now you can listen to them, you can ebook read them if you want, you can read the hard copy books like I do with a pen in your hand. You can do it however you want, but that is an incredible resource that is affordable, and I mean it's about as close to free as you can get, right? It is an affordable way to develop leaders. Now here's how you do this with your people, right? You can say, hey, we're going to read this book together. We're a chapter a week, a couple chapters a week, read it in a month, let's get together and talk about it. But if you did that a few times throughout the year, and you actually read it and talked about it together and read it together and said, hey, what can our church learn from what was in this book? That is a great way to just move, to get the ball rolling, right? It's not the end all, but it's a way to get going on leadership development. So you'd say, all right, well, what books do I read? We have a recommended list of 7 different books that you can read. And if you'll go to the address right here on the screen, churchfuel.com/books, right? That's 7 church leadership books, or leadership books that we think work really well in a church setting that you could read with your staff, with your elders, with your potential leaders that you've identified, with your team. Great place to start. There's some great books. There's others, right? But you could start with these. You could start with just one. But books are a great way to do that. Second idea that could go in your toolbox, right? So books are a great tool, but let's be honest, not everybody likes to read. You've probably gotten books for everybody, passed them out, and nobody ever read them. So don't give up on it, but also recognize that, hey, it may not be for everybody. I know there's a famous quote that says, all leaders are readers. And I actually don't believe that. I don't think all leaders are readers. I think all leaders are learners, but some people don't learn best through books, and that's okay. That's okay. So another tool at your disposal are conferences. There are some great leadership conferences. Now, disclaimer, there are some really waste of time leadership conferences, but there are some great, good use of your time conferences to go to. And throughout the years, I have benefited. I've gotten many ideas and inspiration, and I feel like words from the Lord at different times through events like conferences. And so you could take your leaders to a conference. There's probably one close to you. There's simulcast of conferences these days to where even your church could host a conference, a simulcast conference. You could watch online for a lot of conferences. But there are great events that are organized to help you lead and help your people get better at leading. And if you'll go to churchfuel.com/conferences, some of our favorites, some of the ones we're actually going to be at and attend with our team, we put those up for you. Just some of the ones we recommend. It's not an end-all list again. There are others. And we're not trying to make a list of all the possible conferences you can go to. But there are some ideas there. A third way to do this is, and the reason I like this third way, it's one of my favorite ways, is because not everybody reads books. Sometimes conferences, it's hard to get on the schedule and they can tend to be expensive. And so our team actually released a resource to help you called Train Your Team. And Train Your Team is it's a video-based leadership development, skill-based leadership development program. So it's video-based, it's skill-based leadership development ideas that you can share with your team. And we say this is what you do when you don't have time to do what you know you ought to do, right? And so you could take your existing meetings and use Train Your Team, your existing structure, and just use this. And it's affordable and it's easy. And I'm going to talk about it at the end, but I want you to know it's an option. It's an option available to you. You got books, you got conferences, and you've got Train Your Team. Any of those would be a great way to begin the process, to continue the process of developing leaders in your church. So number 1 was start where you are. The action step there is identify your current and potential leaders. Who do we have right now? Okay. Number 2 was build a toolbox. Just decide what tools are we going to use with these people, right? So we've got people and now we've got tools. And number 3, probably the most important part of this is create a plan. Create a plan. So you got to start where you are. You got to build a toolbox, but then you've got to create a plan. How are we going to develop leaders? When are we going to develop leaders? How are we going to move people from volunteer to leader, right? And so our plan is always going to start with clarifying what does it mean to be a leader in our church. Okay, so this is something I want you to think about as you're pastoring, as you're leading a church. When you say leader, does everybody know what that means? I was working with a church once out in California, and they said, that's a great question, because when you say leader, you mean like anybody that kind of leads and has influence. But in our church culture, when we say leader, we're talking about somebody that is officially on a committee, on a leadership committee in our church. And this pastor I was working with and we had a different definition of a leader. Now, one's not right, one's not wrong. It wasn't a right or wrong thing, it was a clarity thing. So when you're going to create a plan to move people, when you're going to create a pipeline, a process, and all these things, and I'll give you some tools and point you in the right direction on this, the first thing you've got to do is clarify what that means. What does it mean to be a leader? What does it mean to lead at the church? So you've got to define those roles. Are they volunteer roles? Are they leadership roles? Are they staff roles? What are the roles that we're trying to fill in our church? And then once you define the roles, then you've got to define the skills, all right? So if somebody's going to move from a volunteer to a leader, what skills do they need? Like, what skills do they need to know? If somebody's going to move from a leader to staff, what skills do they need? What character traits do they need? I mean, what does it look like? So you've got to define the roles, you've got to define the skills, and you've got to define the process. And all this together, it can get very complicated, right? And so that's why we try to simplify it down and put everything together into a one-page pipeline. It's a one-page pipeline. And this one-page pipeline, it looks like this. And it's a place where you can just fill in what roles exist in our church. What skills are required to move from one step to another. What mile markers along the way are they? What people are sitting at what steps along the process? This is not a complicated leadership pipeline. This is not creating a culture of this is not all that stuff yet. It becomes that. What this is a simple snapshot view. We have churches that use this one-page pipeline and they say, this is what we do. I mean, we've just simplified it down to one page and this is what we do. And this one-page pipeline is a way to look at what roles are required, what skills are required, and then what processes move somebody from step 1 to step 2 to step 3. Now, as you look at this one-page pipeline, not everybody wants to move from step 1 to step 2. It's not even feasible for everybody to move from step 2 to step 3. You actually need people at step 1, 2, and 3. The goal is not to get everybody to 3. The goal is to clarify who's at what step. They're all important. And then what is required to move from one step or step down into a different step, right? And so this one-page pipeline is a snapshot view. It is the beginning of your plan. It is a great way to get started on identifying what roles exist, what skills need to happen, and then what the process are to move this through. Now, once you kind of have a organized plan, then what you can do is now you're in a place to be able to put leadership development on your calendar. And so you can pull out that list, potential leaders. You know what you need to do? Just get some coffee. Get some coffee with them. Have coffee. Have a meeting. When are we going to do training? Well, now you can put it on your calendar because there's a way for all this to work. And this one-page pipeline, we will walk you through this. We have a whole course that builds out on this one-page pipeline. We have all kinds of training to help you implement this. But this one-pager is so vital to you having a culture of leadership in your church. Now, that template, this training that I was talking about, these tools, all this stuff that we've been talking about, we've done a ton of the work for you. Now, you could just stop right now and you could say, all right, I'm going to stop and I'm going to take my takeaways. And my takeaways are, I need to identify some potential leaders. I need to decide what tools we're going to use on the potential leaders. And I'm going to try to sketch out a pipeline. And that would be a huge step forward for most churches because very few churches have actually taken those intentional steps. And now now you can do them. You can say, I got to identify potential leaders. I got to decide which tools we're going to use. You can make progress now. But if you want to expedite that process, if you want to speed up that process and really get going on this, I want to invite you to join a program that we have created called Train Your Team. It's not a very creative name. It's just I name stuff what it is. It is a program to help you train your team. Now, what is your team? Well, it could be your staff. It could be elders. It could be deacons. It could be Sunday school teachers. It's anybody in an official leadership capacity in your church. This will help train them. This will help train them with the skills that they need to do well. And so what is Train Your Team? It is leadership development coaching for all the leaders in your church. How does it work? It's really, really simple. It's really powerful. You have a structure in your church that already exists. Those leaders gather somewhere, right? Maybe you have a staff meeting. Maybe you have an elder meeting. Maybe you have a leadership, training events that happen. You have some kind of structure. It may be great, it may not be great, but there's some structure that exists. All you do is you use Train Your Team in the structure that already happens. If you say, well, we don't have any structure, well, you at least know who these people are and you can send them stuff, right? So there's a structure that exists in your church. All you do is at the beginning of those meetings that already exist, you take 20 minutes. You watch a 10-minute video from one of our leadership coaches, and then you lead a 10-minute discussion applying the principles to your church. And that is simple, skill-based leadership without more meetings, without going anywhere, without getting on airplanes, without a whole bunch of reading. It is very, very, very simple. The cool thing about this is the people who are coaching are really leadership practitioners in the church. Jeff Henderson, Jenny Ketchon, San Chand, lots of others are coaching on these videos. It's like they're showing up in your staff meeting and say, hey, today I want to talk about giving feedback. Hey, today I want to talk about dealing with the difficult person. Hey, today I want to talk about casting vision. It's the stuff they would talk about if you invited and paid for them to come into your meeting. And it's 10 minutes and it's a simple discussion. And so it's a really, really, really powerful tool. We've gotten some great feedback from people who have been using tools like this. Pastor Corey says this. He says, church tools help me as a pastor. And it's aligned our church vision with our church ministries. We followed the action plan. We've tweaked it to fit our dynamic. And I love what he says right here. He says attendance has increased, finances have increased, and we have retained new members. I've not witnessed anything like this because it's a hands-on approach. We aren't just a dollar figure or a number. I'm proud to be a member. We are so proud to serve Pastor Corey and other pastors just like him because we genuinely want to help you develop leaders in your church. Here's another email we got from a pastor named Travis. He said, I'm a pastor of a 1-year-old church plant in Nashville. Thanks for what you do. Many of your resources have been helpful to us. Being able to build systems quickly has been a lifesaver on more than one occasion. We know you need a leadership system. We know you need a leadership pipeline. And our goal with Train Your Team is to come alongside you and make it easy. We use the phrase, just push play, right? You can gather everybody together, push play on your computer, watch the video, and you are developing leadership skills right there in the room. And so if you've stuck around till the very end, I told you at the beginning that I would give you an offer to join. And because you've stuck around till the end, I want to go ahead and give that offer to you. And here's the deal. Train Your Team is normally $59 a month. That's a great value. It's an incredible deal. Like if you did that for a whole year, it's still cheaper than going to one conference. And this is for your whole team. So it's normally $59 a month. But because you have already invested your time, I know the training was free today, but you spent your time, and that's significant. Because you have already spent your time, we want to give it to you for $49 a month. $49 a month. So it's $10 a month save you $120 a year. It is a month-to-month deal. There's not a long-term contract. You can cancel anytime you want. And the offer is right here on the page. So if you'll click the offer right off to the side, that is the special deal to get the special price. You could go to trainyourteam.com and read all about the program. But if you join from trainyourteam.com, it'll be at $59 a month. If you join from the webinar right now, it'll be $49 a month. And you'll be locked in on that price for as long as you want to stay. There's no contract. You can cancel anytime. But we will never raise the price on you. That will be your price for as long as you want to stay. It's not a long-term contract. You can use this program to develop the leaders in your church. When you join right now, you're going to see that there's already several videos already in there, so you can pick and choose. And we're going to add 2 more every single month, so you'll keep getting fresh content from our coaches. We'll keep adding the best stuff so that you can train your team. Now, as a bonus, I mentioned this earlier, I want to give you, when you sign up for Train Your Team, not only the low price, but I want to give you our brand new leadership course. We just call this the leadership course. And this is where we unpack, it's 5 modules of coaching, and we unpack that 1-page template and go in depth what skills should actually be developed? What roles should exist? How do we get people to volunteer and move from volunteer to lead? How do we move people, through the stages of our pipeline? It's several hours of training. It's very practical. There's tons of templates, not just the one-page pipeline template, but there's tons of other resources that come in the class. It'll help your staff. It'll help volunteers. It'll help all your leaders. It is an amazing, amazing course. And that's a $500 course that we sell on our website. We will include it with your subscription to Train Your Team. So you will not need to pay anything extra. So for $49 a month, if you join off the webinar right now for the next few minutes, you'll get Train Your Team and you'll get the leadership course bundled together. All the training, all the resources, the ongoing Train Your Team resources, and it'll help you develop leaders, not just now, but over the next years and years and years of your ministry. It's a really, really quality product, and I'm really excited about it. It's a really practical product, and the coaches are doing such a great job. It's like they're coming into your staff meeting and your training and coaching. And so just to answer a few questions as we wrap up, people say, well, we don't have, some questions that come in and say, we don't have a staff meeting every week. Can we use this? The answer is absolutely. So it's a video-based resource. So if you gather as a staff meeting, you can put it up on a screen or flip a computer around. But videos are very easy also to send to your leaders. And you could say, hey, here's this week's video. Watch this. And we have some churches that either use Slack or they will text back and forth, or even a private Facebook group just with their leaders to where they talk about the concepts in the video. So it's like, hey, we just watched the video with Sam Chan. Here's our takeaways for our church. And you could do all this offline. You don't have to gather. You could do it offline. You could put the videos out there and just kind of have everybody chime in whenever they want. You can use them in a retreat setting. Anytime you have a leadership retreat, you could say, hey, we're going to start our leadership retreat sessions with some training so we can get better. Another question that comes in is what are the training like? And this is probably one of my favorite things, is we have identified some core skills, core leadership skills. And all of the videos relate back to those core skills. So we think there are core skills that people should have. And what's cool is that as your leaders get better in your church, right, you help them learn how to give better feedback. That's going to help them, that's going to help your church. It's also going to help their marriage. It'll help them in their job, right? Learning how to give good feedback is just a helpful skill that people need to have. And so as all the leaders in your church at all the different levels get better at these skills, it helps all the ministries in your church. And so imagine what would happen in the next year if just all your leaders, the people that you identified, here's our current leaders, here's our potential leaders. Imagine if all those people just got better. I mean, wouldn't it be cool if just all the leaders in your church got better at leading? That will absolutely help your church. And that's why I believe leadership development connected with discipleship is one of the greatest growth techniques that can happen in your church. When you focus on people, right, ministries will get better. When you focus on developing your people, right, all this stuff will get better. I'm a big believer in processes, but people are more important than processes because people have to run the processes. And so invest in your people. Come join us at Train Your Team. Again, the button here on this page will give you that special price, and it'll also unlock that leadership course for you, which is a really, really, really cool course. It would be great to go through as a team. You could watch it on your own and just get a ton of insight from it. So if you have any questions at all about anything we talked about today, whether it's content related or Train Your Team related, I want to just invite you to email me. It's just michael@churchfuel.com. That comes to me. I'll be glad to answer it, point you in the right direction, help you any way that we can. If our team at Church Fuel can help you with leadership, systems, processes, growth, outreach, strategy, any of those things, just reach out. Let us know how we can serve you. We'd love to know about you and your church and what God's doing there, and we will come alongside and help you any way that we can. And so I just wanted to thank you for your time today, for investing this time to spend with us, and I hope this has been helpful. I hope it generated just a couple ideas. I've realized that sometimes just one or two simple ideas really can make a big difference over time. So hopefully this did that for you today. Thanks for watching, and God bless.